Hello everyone, and welcome to Pro Baseball World Tour here on the RCC Multimedia YouTube channel. My name is Rick Crabb, and joining me as always is my colleague from his palatial state in New York, Mr. Eric Marenbach. Eric, good evening, and how was your weekend, sir?
Pretty awesome weekend. It's one of those abnormal weather weekends where temperatures were still kind of springish-like, so I was still able to keep the shorts out.
There you go.
Watch a couple of games with my 13U people. They're not 12U anymore, they're 13.
Oh, nice.
Fortunately, they're in a little bit of a slump, just like certain teams are limping into the playoffs with, but hopefully they snap out of it, and certain teams, now that the slate is wiped clean, we'll see what happens.
Right, and I mean, they say the playoffs are a second season anyhow, so maybe that's just what they need. Maybe they just have to, I don't know, get the rest of the regular season out of their system and get their top starters, and I don't know, maybe it'll help things out. But
Exactly.
And speaking of playoffs, limping into an otherwise, the Major League Baseball season, just as quickly as it started, it literally started at the beginning of this program, it has now officially ended, and they will be starting the playoffs in both the American League and the National League this week, this Tuesday. And one interesting thing we were discussing off of the air, Eric, is that Commissioner Manfred is talking about allowing fans to see some of the playoff games and the World Series games that take place in the Texas Rangers Stadium. According to an article from the Dallas Morning News, it says Commissioner Rob Manfred says MLB plans to allow fans for the NLCS and the World Series at the Rangers Globe Life Field. And let's see. Could there be fans in the Rangers' new Globe Life Field before the end of the 2020 season? A thought that seemed highly unlikely just months ago has suddenly become a real possibility. In an exclusive interview with USA Today, MLB Commissioner Rob Manfred said that the league is planning on allowing fans during the National League Championship Series and the World Series, which will both be hosted at Globe Life Field. The World Series will run from October 20th to as late as October 28th. MLB, according to MLB, quote, "We are pressing ahead to have fans in Texas," Manfred said. "One of the most important things to our game is the presence of fans. Starting down the path of having fans in stadiums and in a safe and risk-free environment is very, very important to our game." Globe Life Field, which is in its inaugural season, has yet to host any fans this season amidst the coronavirus pandemic. The Rangers have hosted crowds up to 5,000 for high school graduation since May. The stadium seats 40,000 fans, so the possibility for increasing capacity while maintaining social distancing does exist. The Rangers and MLB officials on September 15th declined to discuss a target figure for capacity. So, I mean, you and I were talking about that off the air, Eric. You were saying that you mentioned something interesting. Why don't you share with me about the season ticket info that you just mentioned to me earlier?
Okay. I know that in the past, league events such as All-Star games, playoffs, postseason, what have you, you are allowed a certain amount of tickets reserved for all 30 clubs to use, which, of course, your priority goes to your season ticket holders. Now, in this age of COVID, you're obviously going to have limited capacity, so that's going to get numbers thrown in there. You're going to have, what'd you say, Globe Life holds around 40,000?
Yeah,
I have a feeling that you're only going to be able to have about 10, maybe 25% capacity.
Right.
So 25% of 40,000, you're going to have about 10,000 fans in there.
Right.
Now, if you go by what I have said about other teams being given the right to purchase tickets, You're going to give right of first refusal, obviously, to your home base over in Texas. But all 29 teams are also, or at least they should be allowed, to purchase a certain amount of tickets through some sort of a lottery system. I don't know how that's going to work. I don't know if they've even anticipated this, but that's the way it's worked in the past with other such events. I know in All-Star games that I've participated in, the games at Yankee Stadium in 2008, Citi Field in 2013, et cetera, the season ticket holders and or the local crowd has right of first refusal, and then how they divvy up the rest. They have a certain time period. Of course, everything's going to be compressed because everything is being thought up in such a short time period. But I would think they'd have to take that into consideration, wouldn't you?
I would think so, too. And also, the thing with Major League Baseball, working with the other professional leagues throughout the world, they have kind of a monkey-see, monkey-do attitude, kind of. They look to other leagues for models. The time that we're recording this is a Monday night where they have a highly anticipated Monday night football game between the Baltimore Ravens and the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, what they are doing and what they did the previous night in New Orleans between the New Orleans Saints and, my goodness, I forgot. Oh, the Green Bay Packers. I almost forgot their. What those two games they were talking about doing was they were originally just allowing immediate family and friends of the players and coaches to come to the games. They were using that as an experiment to see how well they do as far as, I guess, with COVID tracing and that kind of thing, and maybe they can work from there. I'm wondering if maybe Major League Baseball might use a similar model, but hopefully, I like yours better. Hopefully, they'll allow actual fans and not just, wives and children of the players to come. But I don't know, or I don't really know how much. Honestly, I don't know how much atmosphere really that could add. I mean, especially like last night I was watching, it was like Drew Brees' wife and kids were in a skybox. I mean, I don't know how much noise they can actually make and translated down to the field to the Superdome, that kind of thing. And plus, if you're going to do that, you want to at least see some fans in the stands. If they're up in the skybox, it's like a big deal. They probably do that without COVID anyhow. So.
And I'll tell you what, I didn't see the first game with the Chiefs back in opening week a couple of weeks ago, where they allowed, I believe, it was 16,000 people in there. Mm-hmm. I don't know what the rationale was for even letting people in there in the first place, but I also don't know how the tickets were distributed, whether it was the family thing or whether it was a lottery system, season ticket holders, what have you.
I wonder that too, especially since if they practice social distancing and they space like a seat or two apart. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know how that would work. And plus, some sections were probably actually blocked off with tarps or anything. I mean, I remember years ago, my father and I had Baltimore Ravens season tickets. We were behind one of the end zones. This year, that end zone is, I think it has cardboard cutouts of a super fan that had died years ago. But, I mean, it's blocked off from the... It would be blocked off even if they did allow fans. Because there were other front row sections along the sidelines that were also tarped off with team sponsors and league sponsors and that kind of thing. But, I would wonder that myself. And I would wonder if my father and I still had tickets where our seats would be if they actually allowed fans, because we wouldn't be able to sit at our regular seats. So
this postseason is going to be very different, even if they do allow fans into wherever, because of the national TV that's involved. It's no longer the regional networks. It's no longer your local networks with your local broadcasters. It's national media. So they're going to rely on whatever fans and or cutouts they can get in just for the atmosphere.
Right. And, I mean, all the teams, are using piping sound, and it's like a lot of, I mean, listen to radio broadcasts. I can almost not tell the difference between a regular radio broadcast or, you know, one with piped in crowd sound. I mean, but, and then Fox, I know some of their broadcasts, they had been putting in like EA Sports versions of fans in some of the bleachers. I mean, you know, so to add to it a little bit. I don't know. It's like you and I were used to watching Asian baseball, and we're like, okay, big deal, you know, empty stadium. All right, let them play. It's like, but I guess some of the players, and I guess some of like the network people in America are just too, you know, aren't open-minded enough to be like, well, there's got to be some noise, you know. But I don't know.
I don't know. You know, as far as I'm concerned, let the games keep going. If they have to pipe in crowd noise, I don't care.
Right. And baseball, I don't think, at least in this country, I don't think it factors as much with home crowds as much as other sports like football or basketball or hockey or anything like that, where you do, I mean, home teams usually do have a decent home field advantage. I mean, especially like last night, if the fans would have been allowed to that game in New Orleans between them and the Packers, I mean, that would have been just insane. New Orleans is usually insane with crowd noise anyway. Same with tonight's game in Baltimore between the Chiefs and the Ravens. I mean, you'd have like 70,000 people just going nuts. And of course, a lot of them, having gone to several night games at that stadium, would have a little bit of liquid courage before the game, probably like starting maybe like 3 or 4 hours before kickoff. But anyway, yeah, that's one thing. Some of these events, I mean, baseball, I think they can do it better than other sports, but it's like with football, I mean, to me, it's like with alcohol, it's like the worst exercise in cat herding. It really is. I mean, as far as getting fans to go through the gates and make sure they're wearing their masks and make sure they're sitting apart. And I could see some belligerent fools not obeying that, you know. Baseball might be a different story, but, you know, other sports, I don't see that happening. And as I said to you on another episode of the show, Eric, as far as I'm concerned, as long as the players are safe, make every game just a game, the game show network, make it like 70s sitcom TV where you have a laugh track, or in this case, a crowd track. So let them play by themselves, let us watch them at home or wherever, you know, we're allowed to, and take it from there.
And I gotta tell you, and I think we've discussed this on other episodes, this season, for some of the guys, the higher paid, higher leverage guys, has benefited them by not hearing the crowds. Because you get a high leverage guy making $300-400 million over his contract, and he goes into an 0 for 30. He's going to hear it from the crowd.
Excellent point.
You did not hear a peep of that this year.
No.
So at the beginning, when guys like Giancarlo, also known as Mike Stanton, came in, where he's been bombarded by boos ever since he's come to the Yankees. Every time he goes 0 for 5, 1 for 5 with 4 strikeouts, what have you. Whatever hits he got, whatever production they got out of him, was magnified by the fact where he doesn't hear the boos when he does strike out 4 times a night.
Right.
So it did benefit him for the short term, and then all of a sudden he started getting into a rhythm where the strikeouts kept coming back again.
Yeah, interesting point. And also, like, what was supposed to be a story this year before COVID hit, a lot of people were saying that the Houston Astros were going to get razzed by fans of other teams, and supposedly, you know, teams, we did see a little bit of that this season. Teams were supposedly going to retaliate because of the alleged cheating that the Astros did, but they didn't hear any of that this year, and I'm wondering that's just a situation it'll be postponed until next season or whichever season that, you know, fans are allowed in the stadiums or COVID is under control somehow.
I think that now that the apology tour is hit and the Astros are actually in the playoffs in a low seed, I believe when they finished in the 7th seed overall, and I believe they're playing Oakland. I'm not even sure, but I got to tell you, all that's going to go out the window next year. You've even got a situation where the Red Sox, as dismal as they were this year, which it was anticipated that they were going to.
Right.
They've already fired their manager, who I thought was on an interim basis anyway, and there's already a rumor going around that Cora might come back.
Oh, wow, no kidding.
All the cheating stuff, I think that's going to get swept under the rug. Whether it goes back to complete normalcy, I don't know. I mean, Baker's going to keep his job.
Right.
But it would be interesting to see if Boston actually goes back to that level and puts Cora back there.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be a lot of rebuilding to do. They were rebuilding on the fly. It'd be interesting to see what direction they actually go in.
Right. Well, it's interesting you mentioned about as far as like standings and like who teams are going to be matched up. One thing I wanted to ask you about, Eric, you were mentioned earlier about like the national TV. Usually they would slot specific time slots for the games, and usually, much to the chagrin of a lot of people, Fox and TBS would be placing some of the games on at like 8 or 9 o'clock Eastern. But looking at the schedule now, one thing, the playoffs are supposed to start on the 29th, and we have I'm looking at games at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 7 o'clock, and then on the 30th they have the game between the Reds and the Braves starting at noon. And I mean, it's kind of like you would think. I'm trying to think which networks would be benefiting from that. I mean, other than say like ESPN or cable networks or whatever. I can't see Fox Fox doesn't show any soap operas, but I can't see like ABC, if they're running their ESPN brand, I can't see them interrupting their mid-morning programs for baseball, but you never know.
They were doing it anyway. I mean, when you look at any sort of postseason, if it's on a major network, your primetime shows are going to be preempted anyway.
Well,
so I don't think they're really...
Primetime shows I understand, but I mean, having games at 2 o'clock and 3 o'clock and noon and weird times like that, I don't know how many, I mean, I would imagine, I mean, granted, you and probably you and a lot of our listeners have worked jobs that aren't regular, traditional Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 hours, but a lot of folks do. And, I mean, a lot of them will be missing. I mean, that or be taking long lunch breaks watching baseball and, if their favorite team's on. But, yeah, it's kind of weird. Actually, throughout this whole season, I thought it was strange some of the times. I mean, you'd have games starting like at 6 o'clock and a lot of afternoon games. Some of them because of doubleheaders, but some of them not. I mean, it's like Toronto, when they played their games in Buffalo, they decided to have their games at 6 o'clock, largely because Toronto had them at the Rogers Center at that time. I'm guessing, the time difference, that kind of thing. But, yeah, it was just a lot of weird times. Sometimes it was hard to keep track of games because of that. There was one day I actually got into my car at lunch listening to my regular sports talk station, which is the Orioles affiliate, and they were doing a pregame show for the Orioles like around, I don't know, just before 12 o'clock. I was like, what's going on here? So, I mean, I should be used to weird baseball times watching KBO, but this is ridiculous.
Well, unfortunately, with the compressed schedule the way it is, and you're actually going to have games, Game 2 in the American League overlap with Game 1 of the National League, which is always the case anyway. But you're going to have actually 8 games going on Wednesday because you don't have off days.
I was going to mention that as well, though. I mean, it's kind of strange they're doing that, but I guess again, the time window that they're working in. I don't think they want to have baseball going into Halloween, but it sounds like they might. But no, I hope they do in a way. It'll give us more to talk about. I mean, more baseball, whatever, win-win. But I guess that's also why they selected their sites. I mean, they're fairly warm weather sites. Although I do remember watching a Super Bowl that was in the Dallas Cowboys Stadium and they had snow. So I don't know if that's really all that much better, but who knows.
Well, if you remember a few years back when they tried doing it at Giant Stadium.
Ooh.
And that was, I was in Florida doing the snowbird thing, but I actually was contemplating coming back just to experience a Super Bowl in frigid temperatures. I mean, I didn't really care what teams were in it.
Right.
But just to see it out of the Super Bowl loop.
Right.
Kind of thing.
Yeah,
and just to see different atmosphere.
Mm-hmm. Well, I have friends that are from that area, and they like the fact that they did most of like the NFL like fan zone kind of stuff. They actually did in Manhattan and New York, and not in the Meadowlands near MetLife Stadium. And it's like they were having like things at Rockefeller Center and Times Square and that kind of thing. And then I don't know. I thought it was interesting how they set it up too. I heard like press people were complaining that their press seats, they were in the upper decks of MetLife, and they were given, basically they were given a program, they were given a shirt, and they were given hand warmers, and like a couple other things, but they had to like sit way up in the top, in the upper decks to watch that game, which I would have loved it too, even though my team wasn't in it. I think it was the Seahawks and the Broncos that year, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, it has to be interesting, because they were talking about doing, because of 9/11, they were talking about having Super Bowls either in the New York area, which they did, and also Washington too, because of the two teams. But I don't know, the stadium where the Washington no-name football team plays, it looks like it's really antiquated. It looks like the world's biggest McDonald's playland, and then I don't know, it's falling apart. And I don't know if you've ever been to a game there or not, Eric, but it's a nightmare getting in and out, because they used the old infrastructure getting into that stadium. They used to have across the street a place called the Capitol Center, where the Washington Capitals and the team that's now called the Wizards, formerly the Washington Bullets, used to play. And they used those congested streets to where they tore down the Capitol Center, made into a shopping mall basically, and they rerouted those roads to the Washington football team stadium. I mean, I had gone to concerts and hockey games there, Eric, and it's like just leaving a 20,000 seat arena was a traffic backup enough. But coming out of that stadium, they actually have shuttle buses, and I've had friends who are Redskins fans who said it would take them like 3 hours to get out of the parking lot. It was just a nightmare. So I'm hoping Washington doesn't ever have one, unless they actually have like a new stadium in the district or something, because the old one that they have now is a joke. So
I actually think I went there once, and I think it's now being used as a flea market, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, the Capitol Center?
That was not Washington. That was Baltimore. Before Camden Yards opened.
Okay, yeah, Memorial Stadium, yeah. Now literally I think the YMCA, took over that place. They have like a campus, and they actually have a ball field. It's the same, has the same home plate and dimensions as Memorial Stadium, but they have like the buildings of the YMCA campus there surrounding it, almost like an outfield wall. But it's kind of weird. I've driven past there before, and I've been used to seeing as a kid the old-fashioned light towers for that stadium, and it's like that would basically almost be like a landmark to find the place. And now it's kind of like, where is it? You feel like, something, I don't know, feel like the building's been raised. You feel like it's, I don't know, something's missing there. You should see it,
Right.
All right. Well, I have up here now what the schedule will be for what the matchups will be for the 29th. I'm just going to go through the 29th, 30th. It'll be the first round of games. We have on the September 29th, 2 o'clock Eastern, we have the Houston Astros at the Minnesota Twins. We have the Chicago White Sox at the Oakland Athletics. The Toronto Blue Jays at the Tampa Bay Rays. The New York Yankees at the Cleveland Indians. Cincinnati Reds. And then the 30th, we have Cincinnati Reds at the Atlanta Braves. Houston Astros at the Twins again at 1. The Miami Marlins, Corona Fish at the Chicago Cubs. The Chicago White Sox at the Oakland Athletics. Buffalo Blue Jays at the Tampa Bay Rays. And the Cardinals at the Padres. And the Yankees at the Cleveland Indians. And let's see, and the Milwaukee Brewers at the Dodgers. So you have some teams already playing their second games. You have other teams just starting their playoffs as it is. So, and it's a variety of times. Check your local listings for the games in your area or broadcast in your area, whatever that may be. Because I'm looking at some of these teams. It's like you got a whole slate of baseball. I mean, it's like September 30th, for example. I mean, you have the Reds at Atlanta at 12 noon Eastern, and then you have that going all the way till the Brewers at the Dodgers starting at 10 o'clock Eastern. So, I mean, I know you, Eric, you are a hardcore baseball fan, and I can see you watching a lot of these games. I might try to catch some of you because of my work schedule, but yeah, they're cramming a lot of baseball in there, which can be good, can be bad, but, it is what it is, as they say.
It's being a victim of your own situation. This is what they've come up with. An expanded playoff system where you've got an extra round in there. And the TV networks are going to ultimately live up to their contract, so that they don't care one way or the other.
Right.
It's just a question of who's going to broadcast what game. There might actually be games put on like delayed tape so that people can be able to watch them.
Right.
I don't know how to work it, but it's going to be fun nonetheless.
Mm-hmm. And what's interesting, you have, again, we spoke about this in other episodes, you have the National League teams playing in Texas, but you have the American League teams playing in Dodger Stadium. I mean, it's like, that's kind of weird. And most of the teams are like East Coast and Central teams for the American League, so it's like, the Dodgers, okay, yeah, they have to go to Texas, but I mean, I imagine it's not that much of a flight from LA to Dallas as it is to, say, from New York to LA, at Miami to LA, or Buffalo to LA in the case of the Blue Jays. So it's, I don't know. That's interesting that they do that, though.
I think what they did, the times between when the first round ends and the second round begins, I think there's a delay of a bunch of days in there. It's not quite a week, but it's basically to get everybody situated in the quote-unquote bubble where you're supposed to be and get everybody acclimated to being in that spot and staying in that spot and get over jet lag, etc.
Yeah.
So I think the way that they did it is cool. A little unorganized at first, but I think it's going to work out.
Yeah, I think so too. And we've joked on the first few episodes about, calling the Marlins Corona fish and the Cardinals Corona birds and talking about a Corona story every week, but it seems like they have somewhat kind of things more under control and getting their act together with it, which is good. It's player safety. We don't We don't want anybody to get hurt. We want baseball to get everybody home safe, but... So I'm glad that's the case, and I'm hoping that, they can straighten things out by next season, or at least have something firmer in place.
Here's the irony in this whole thing, okay? For months now, we've been bitching about Miami and the whole state of Florida being like the epicenter 2.0 after we suffered in New York with massive cases and deaths.
Mm-hmm.
Look at the four major sports and look who's left in the picture as far as the playoffs go. You've got the Tampa Bay Lightning playing for their lives in the Stanley Cup Finals, and you got the Miami Heat in the NBA.
Right.
Could you imagine, along with the Marlins and Tampa, the Rays making the playoffs in MLB, could you imagine, after having put up with as much as they've put up with, all of Florida being in playoff scenarios and nobody being able to see them?
That's a very strong possibility. And in all those sports, you're right. And then of course people in Canada are frustrated. It's like finally we're going to have a Stanley Cup won on Canadian soil, and neither the teams are Canadian. So,
Yeah, that's complete neutral sites, but that's again the victim of the bubble. But
right.
What do you?
And I know we're a baseball show, but it has me wondering what the other sports are going to do, because usually hockey and basketball will be. Hockey will be starting like later in October, and basketball probably a month after that. I'm wondering when they're going to be able to start, and I heard talk about them having bubbles, for their next season too. So I don't know.
I heard something about the NBA is going to be starting sometime around November or December, and the same with the NHL.
Which wouldn't be too bad, but yeah, I guess they figured the players already had their off season, but that big break between the regular season and the playoffs, but it's still kind of weird. And also here in Baltimore, another sport, we have the Preakness on this coming Saturday, Eric, in October. And usually the Triple Crown. I'm sorry.
Are they actually going to let people in there?
No, it'll be it's empty stands there as well. No, they're not letting.
Oh.
Yeah, it's just going to be just the horses and their trainers and all that stuff. But no, they're not letting any fans in the infield or the stands or anything like that. So, and this year, what's interesting, it's like usually that's the middle race of the Triple Crown, and I'm sure you're very familiar with Belmont Stakes. They had the Belmont as the middle race this year. I think they may have already had it, if I'm not mistaken. But
no, the Belmont was the first one.
Oh, wow, that's right. You're right, because they had the Kentucky Derby after that. That's...
It completely flip-flopped, bro.
Crazy COVID, man. It's even messing up the horses. Good Lord. Poor guys. All right, Eric, do you have anything further to comment about Major League Baseball before we take a break and travel to Korea, or?
Well, all right. Being a Yankee fan, I gotta make a comment.
Sure.
They're doing the same thing this year that they did last year, and this year with the new playoffs arrangement, the way that it is, it actually cost them home games, where you coasted into the final couple of weeks, and it cost you home field. They did the same thing last year, and it cost them the extra home game, which could have gotten them into the World Series. But the Astros played hard, finished with best record. Yankees thought that they could coast in and played who they wanted. But then when it came down to the ALCS, where they knew it was pretty much inevitable that they were going to face the Astros, the extra home game went in favor of Houston because they didn't play hard in the last couple of weeks, partially due to expanded rosters, which you didn't have this year. But you had the same situation this year where you had too many losses at a particular time where it was critical, and it's costing your team playoff games in your own stadium where statistically you've done much better in the home run department.
Right.
So,
yeah, well,
that's just one thing I got about the Yankees, and just let things roll the way they roll.
Right. And meanwhile, my Orioles will be watching them from the golf course. Although I am encouraged by some of the players that played. They have some bats that came a lot. Some of the pitching has done better than thought. I mean, they still finished with a losing record, but they're not the worst in the division, at least. Thank you, Boston. But so it'll be interesting next year if they go. If they are able to have a full season, see what happens. Hopefully for my team, the Orioles, we see some building blocks, and maybe it can be like what Houston was a few years ago, or the Detroit Tigers were like many years ago when they basically started from the bottom up. So we'll see.
Baltimore showed some signs, I have to admit. Believe it or not, I actually think it's going to come down to who they retain as coaches.
Mm-hmm.
Because if they bring in a whole new staff next year, I mean, Brandon Hyde's obviously going to stick in as far as managers, but if they alternate the coaches around just to try and get the right mix in there, you never know.
Right. And the situation, too, with using their AA team stadium as the alternate site, and apparently, some of the players, they credit some of the coaches at that alternate site for helping them when they got called up, and they said they had some really good instruction. It might not be a bad idea to bring some of those coaches up. I mean, teams do that anyway under normal circumstances through the minor leagues, but this year, this situation especially. Especially if you have players coming up, I think it sounds like it would really be good for chemistry for that team, but we'll see. Well, congrats to the 16 teams that are in. We'll talk about them, I'm sure, next week in greater detail, see how those series are going, and we'll be back. We'll be ready for playoff baseball. All right, folks.
Absolutely.
Yep. All right, we're going to take a short break, and when we return, we're going to move our world tour over to South Korea and the KBO. You're listening to Pro Baseball World Tour here on RTC Multimedia. We'll be right back. Alright folks, welcome back to Pro Baseball World Tour here on RTC Multimedia. Rick Crabb, Eric Marin back, and as promised, we're moving our world tour over from North America over to South Korea for the KBO. One story I want to talk about, Eric, and I'm sure you do as well. Definitely want to send our well wishes to the Kia Tigers pitcher, Mr. Aaron Brooks. For those of you who don't know, his family, his wife and his children were in a serious car accident, and Mr. Brooks had to fly from Korea back to the United States to take care of things. And the KBO, as they have in many cases, have shown great sportsmanship with this. Both Kia and their opponent that week, the KT Wiz, were sending condolences, sending well wishes. They were, and I think all the teams actually were for children, because I think the players over there, Eric, I think they have kind of a family dynamic, even though I know they're competitive, but it seems like them and the Korean people in general are very respectful. I mean, to me, they're almost like the Canada of Asia. I mean, they're typically nice, decent people, and this is definitely showing with what's going on with the Brooks family. So, again, want to send well wishes to Aaron Brooks and his family and his fans, and hopefully his wife and kids pull through.
And that's the general thing about Asia. There's no hostility towards other teams. I mean, remember I told you last week over in CPBL where Chen Wei of the Rakuten Monkeys got beamed in the head by Teddy Stankiewicz of the Uni Lions, and the home crowd, which, you normally just hear the louder cheers from the home team. Mm-hmm. They gave like a little chant and cheer for Chen as he was getting helped off the field with the stretcher.
Yeah, that's classic.
So just the sportsmanship of Asia in general.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, you do see some of that here in this country, but yeah, then there's also examples of, we were talking before about, how alcoholic football fans act like jerks. I mean, there's a story in Philadelphia when Michael Irvin fell on his head on the concrete of Veterans Stadium and the Eagles fans cheered. I mean, yeah, you would cheer like if a player's tackled, but I mean, somebody's getting literally pile driven into concrete. That's just tasteless right there. But good for the CPBL fans for doing that for that pitcher that was hit. And I think you would also mention too the pitcher that actually threw that pitch wanted to visit him at the hospital and everything. So, or ask where the batter was, but
yeah, that's how he was.
Right.
Yeah, Teddy was definitely distraught after that. Mm-hmm. But and I gotta tell you, it was a little weird seeing some of the social media reaction out of public Facebook groups, because as we all know, where we first met on the mykbo.net Facebook group, there were, obviously the report came out on Yohap about the accident and about the fact that Brooks went home to Cali to obviously attend to his family. Mm-hmm. You had a little bit of a reaction from some of the other people on the team saying, when we were trying to find out how Brooks was or how the family was, one of the other people, I guess I'm trying to remember, yeah, it was a family member of the Kia Tigers, had said just try and, keep comments to ourselves as far as, just prayers go out to the Brooks family, but don't say too much, in public on social media. Some people took offense to it because we were just trying to find out what's going on and how he was, but right. I don't know. Some people might portray that wrong. I don't know.
I guess out of respect to the Brooks' family, I mean, if it was a case where, I don't know, it's like you hear like other stories in the news as far as like with injuries or death or whatever. Usually, I don't know, when the police doesn't post things publicly until they find out, confirm, who the person is who suffered the injury or the death or whatever. And maybe it was like the Brooks family wanted, they didn't want news to go out and then hear after the fact, but I don't know. I mean, I guess maybe they felt like the Brooks family was disrespected or whatever, but yeah, I mean, some people just bitch on social media for the sake of bitching on social media too. So I don't know. I thought I had also read too. I think that particular news agency that released that, I heard some people say, they had questioned how reliable they were, but then I had first heard about it, I think probably the next day on ESPN from Daniel Kim, and you and I, obviously a lot of fans value him as a reliable source, but it's such a shame, and from what I understand too, Eric, this is minor compared to what happened to his family and all. Aaron was having a good year, if I remember correctly. So I'm sure Kia, misses him for that regard as well. But they're very understanding of the situation, as they should be, and kudos to how understanding that they are. So
right, Aaron and Drew Gagnon, the former Met, were basically 1-2 on the staff. So from a team standpoint, losing your 1A or 1B guy, it's going to hurt you down the stretch. And it may hurt their playoff chances, but hopefully some of the guys can step up and, if not fill the shoes, kind of, take the place. I don't know.
Right. And sometimes in sports too, Eric, I don't know if this will actually happen with the Tigers or not, but sometimes that's a rallying cry for teams too. They'll want to be like, you know what? Let's get that extra hit for Aaron. Let's get that extra out for Aaron. Let's concentrate on our fielding and not try to kick the ball around and let the other teams score 7 runs in the 8th inning or whatever. It might embolden the team a little bit. So I kind of hope it does, even though it might come at the expense of my LT Twins, but still. But no, I'm pulling for them as far as just. It seems like they're still in the fight for the playoffs, as we'll mention in a little bit with the standings. But so
I kind of like the fact that when a player is injured or whatever, that they'll put the number in chalk on their caps and stuff, just as a little reminder that we haven't forgotten you, that we're all for a speedy recovery.
I like that too. Yeah, I definitely like that. And you also even see in some of the stadiums, they even have banners of those players up. I think I saw on either the Wiz or the Wyverns, they actually have kind of a big cap on one of their signs, and then they put the injured players' numbers there. And I've also seen, I think it's Kia that actually does this. They actually have tall, kind of screen printed banners of the actual players. It's almost like the cardboard stand-ups, but more like flags instead of cardboard. But
yeah.
So. All right. Well, in light of that, let's go to the standings for the KBO. At the top of the list is still the NC Dinos at 71-42-3. Kiwoom Heroes at 71-52-1. The KT Wiz have moved up. They're at 66-50-1. The LT Twins at 65-51-3. The Doosan Bears at 62-53-4, making up the top 5, which, if the season ended today, they would be the teams going to postseason. But not far behind them, at number 6 are the Kia Tigers at 61-54. Lotte Giants are fading a little bit. They still have a winning record at 58-57-1. Samsung Lions fading even further at 52-64-2. And then we have the bottom dwellers, the Poor Wyverns, at 40-79-1, and the Hanwha Eagles at 36-80-2. So those are your standings for the Korean Baseball Organization. Eric, do you have anything additional to comment about our friends in Korea?
Not really much. Just additional prayers for the family of Brooksy, and hopefully we'll see you next year.
Yeah, definitely. And I want to give a shout out to Daniel Kim. We mentioned him earlier as far as being a reliable source. He had posted that he was allowed to be a commentator for one of the broadcasts. He said it was his first for an English broadcast. So he was like the color commentator, I guess, for one of the ESPN KBO games, which I had even said to him in the group. I said, look, a lot of people want you on there. They wanted to hear more from you. You know, it's like they've been... I think you and I have even said, you know, it would be nice if he were like the color analyst for a game, you know. Or, you know, a regular color analyst for KBO since he has a wealth of knowledge. So I told him, he said he was a little nervous about it. I told him, look, a lot of people want to hear you do that, you know, you'll do great. And then he even thanked me in the group, so that was cool. So, so Daniel Kim, if you're listening, you know, good job. Hopefully we get to hear you, even if it's not on ESPN and on Twitch or something of that nature. You know, we'll be watching KBO, large part because of you and your analysis. So, thank you for all that you do.
I echo the sentiment.
Okay, folks. Well, we're going to take another quick break, and when we come back, we're going to move our tour to Taiwan and defer to Eric's knowledge of the CPBL. You're listening to the Pro Baseball World Tour here on RGC Multimedia. We'll be right back. All right, folks, welcome back to Pro Baseball World Tour here on RGC Multimedia. Rick Crabb on the air with Eric Marinbach, and as promised, we will defer to Eric's wealth of knowledge of the CPBL. Eric, what's going on in that league, sir?
Welcome a new leader in the second half. You had the Fubon Guardians actually playing the Lions this weekend in a head-to-head matchup. Fubon actually took 2 out of 3, and they are the new leaders in the second half.
Oh, there you go.
Credit goes to their pitching, although the last game was more of a football score than a baseball score.
Yeah,
and it was a little weird because you had Fubon actually winning in that game as much as like 17-4. If you want to know, the final score of that game was 20-15.
Yeah, I see that, but my goodness, that's a great comeback from Uni to come back within that much after all of that. So
they scored 6 in the 8th and 6 in the 9th, and it's a wonder. It's actually a blessing that all 4 teams had today the traditional Monday off, because could you imagine after running out all those pitchers and all those hitters getting as many at bats as they did, if they had to come back the next day from all that? Oh boy.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah, a lot of tired arms in that clubhouse, that's for sure. Good God.
Tired arms, tired bats, tired everything.
Yeah, legs around the bases too. Good God.
And you've actually got now the minors are going to be starting tonight their playoff run with the inaugural team, the Wei-Chun Dragons, are going to be playing the Brother Elephants in their championship.
Okay.
In Taiwan's version of the Future League.
Oh, okay.
So their game's going at 1 a.m. our time, which is a little rough for me, but I'm going to either figure out a way to DVR it so I can watch most of it, or they do have an on-demand feature, which sometimes for the futures, they don't transfer it to the on-demand right away.
Mm-hmm.
But I hope that since it's the postseason, that they do it. Otherwise, I'm probably going to go to sleep right after we finish the broadcast. So just so I can get a couple of hours of shut-eye in and maybe stay up for this life. I don't know.
There you go. Okay, well, I mean, based on my football loyalties, I'll probably be doing the exact opposite, but I'll probably be going to bed as soon as that game ends, because, I don't know, my get-up time for my day job comes a little early and comes a little fast, so, but, well, hopefully you'll get to see it. I actually like when the KBO does that, like, for, like, the Saturday night, early Sunday morning. I mean, to me, it reminded me of, like, going to, I don't know, a bar, sports bar or nightclub or whatever, and watching a West Coast game with the Orioles against a West Coast team. You know, usually you see the games like at 10 or 11 o'clock or something, and be staying up all night watching baseball. So,
right, and that's what's so weird about, you know, the time difference where we are versus where Asia baseball lies. Mm-hmm. When I'm here, we're watching the Asian leagues in our morning and their nighttime.
Right.
Flip it over to when I'm in Taiwan and I'm watching MLB at 6 o'clock in the morning.
Mm. Yeah.
It's culture shock.
Yeah, definitely.
It's a culture shock, but a fun thing nonetheless.
Yeah. And I would imagine, too, I mean, how long, when you do travel over there, Eric, how long does it take for your body to adjust to that? I mean, it's...
I'm a little weird, whereas, and I'll tell you just from my last trip, okay?
Uh-huh.
I got into Taiwan probably about 5:30, 6 in the morning.
Oh, wow.
After the time difference. My buddy picked me up at the airport. We actually had breakfast. I crashed for maybe 3-4 hours and I was good.
Okay.
And I'm not the type that really sleeps well on planes, so you would think that I would be, like, totally shot for a day or two.
Right.
I don't know, maybe I'm weird, but it didn't take me that long to bounce back at all, and I was hitting games the very next day, so.
Right. I was going to say, I mean...
I guess motivation involved.
Yeah. I mean, that might sound like it would be difficult to do, but I can understand that, too. I mean, if you've been planning your trips, and, I mean, as hardcore as you are with that league, and you're going to go see them live, I mean... I don't know. I could see that, though. I mean, I've done that, too. It's like last year I had a job where I worked 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. And then it was like my buddies wanted to have like the draft party for our fantasy football league, and he wanted to have it at noon. So it's like I came home like at 7 o'clock. I took like a little cat nap at 9 o'clock and then jumped in the shower. I thought I'd be, he was saying, so what do you want for food or drink or whatever? And I said, just have plenty of coffee. But I didn't need it. I felt fine. I don't know why. Sometimes the body can help you out that way, but...
Oh, granted, I needed a Red Bull. that was not a question there.
Right.
And given the fact that in Taiwan, there's basically a 7-Eleven every 500 feet,
nice.
I had no problem getting an energy drink or, anything else that I needed, so I was able to bounce.
Okay.
But it's definitely different.
Oh, okay. And hopefully COVID will be under control. We've said this so many times, Eric. It's like, I don't know. You got me wanting to go there. Got me wanting to talk to a travel agent, but I got to get a passport first, and you got to be allowed to leave this country first. So.
Right. That's the whole thing. I mean, especially with this year's second half. I mean, you still got a couple of weeks to go before the actual Taiwan series, but the standings more or less stay the same from now until the end of the second half. Mm-hmm. And you've got the Guardians and the Lions fighting to play brother for the Taiwan series.
Right.
You don't know how bad I want to be there for either one of those two. I mean, for Fubon to see my buddy Mike Lurie and a couple of the other guys that I know on the team and on the Lions, where you've got former Pirate, young Chen, their pitching coach is Jaime Navarro, former major leaguer. Just to see them would be, the coolest thing ever. So whoever does get to play them, some of the games would be in Taichung, which is, like 10 minutes away from where my buddy lives, where I stay.
Oh, okay. There you go.
It was kind of tough not being there.
Right.
Sort of funny.
And it'd be interesting, too, is like, I know years ago, I worked on another, like an online radio station, and I did a show similar to this with an amateur MMA fighter, and we talked about the UFC and local cards around here. And we had two friends that were fighting each other almost at the main event of a fairly big card in Baltimore, and we were kind of like torn, and it's kind of like one of those deals where like, one hand it was like, we don't want to see friends fight, the other hand it was kind of like, I was trying to get them to promo against each other and make it like Ali Frazier, so I don't know, but I mean, it sucked because the fight went to a decision, and it's like, we were friends with the guy who won and his camp, they were high-fiving us and all that stuff, and then we felt bad for the other guy that was his first professional loss, and even then it was like, letting the judges decide it per se, so, but, I don't know, that was kind of an interesting story, but, I don't know, I'm hoping you get to see your friends, maybe get a rematch next year, or go into the playoffs, when you are able to go back there, so.
Well, what I'd actually love is that, there was a way to, like, Zoom the broadcast, and I could be, like, one of the commentaries or something, or at least be in the dugout, or be at the team hotels with, either one of the guys.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I don't know if the CPBL does, like, I don't know, like a lot of, like, the sports leagues here where they actually have, like, the little blocks of fans, cheering after they hit a home run or score a touchdown or whatever, but, I don't know. It wouldn't surprise me if the CPBL did something like that, but maybe you could be, you're a fan of the game or something, who knows. All right, well, let's go to those standings. I'm sorry?
As you know, in the Asian leagues, when the home team wins, there's always an MVP ceremony out on the field, and there's always, usually a player, and it's 9 times out of 10 the pitcher that is the MVP of the game.
Oh, okay. There we go. Cool.
Just to be on the field for an on-field ceremony, that's kind of another thing on my bucket list.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I could see why. I definitely see why. All right, let's go to the standings for the CPBL. As you mentioned, the Fubon Guardians are now on top. They're at 24-20. The Uni Lions, who are in that slugfest with them, are 23-21-1. The Rakuten Monkeys at 21-24-0. And the China Trust Brother Elephants at 20-23-1. So things are still heating up, but it seems like, I don't know, teams are starting to pull apart a little bit, but it's still fairly tight, and it seems like it'll still be a good playoff race to the end. So
that's the brothers of it being a 4-team league, where everything stays kind of close, unless the third team goes on a run. But second half, it's been pretty close the whole way out. Nobody's been able to distance themselves.
Right. And yeah, they're definitely beating each other up, that's for sure. So, well, we will continue to keep covering the CPBL on this show, folks, and Eric will especially, bring extra knowledge and insight and commentary to that league. All right. Do you have anything else to comment about our friends in Taiwan before we take our final break, or?
No, I'm good.
Okay. All right, folks. We're going to take that final break right now, and we'll move our emphasis to Japan and then wrap things up. You're listening to Pro Baseball World Tour here on the RGC Multimedia YouTube channel. We'll be right back. Alright folks, welcome back to the Pro Baseball World Tour here on RGC Multimedia. Rick Crabb, Eric Marin back, and as promised we are taking our World Tour over to Japan and the NPB. One particular story, this is just my bias coming out, but this is a player you and I are both familiar with because we both have pictures of where we're wearing his shirtsy. I'm sure you remember the pitcher, Mr. Chen, former Baltimore Oriole. Well, come to find out, he is playing in the NPB as of 5 days ago. Says more than a year after his last professional pitch, former Baltimore Oriole pitcher Chen is making a comeback. When we last saw Chen on the mound, he was limping through another disappointing year with the Marlins. The former Baltimore Oriole starter had been banished to the bullpen to serve as a long reliever. He was released after the season, and after a brief stint in the Mariners system, was unable to find any interest. However, Chen had managed to land a new job. He had signed with the Chiba Lotte Marlins for the rest of the year to be formally introduced on October 5th. For Chen, this is essentially an audition for 2021. While the 35-year-old may not return stateside, a strong showing over the rest of the season could lead to a longer-term deal in Nippon professional baseball. And of course, every time I read this, I'm getting ads, so I'm sorry if I'm doing the Paul Harvey pause. Okay, Chen's time in the majors was truly a tale of two teams. He was a solid middle of the rotation arm for the Orioles, posting a 46-32 record with a 3.72 ERA and a 1.252 WHIP over his 706.2 innings, striking out 547 batters with just 172 walks. That solid showing in a difficult AL East and a tough home park led to a 5-year, $80 million contract with the Marlins. That contract was a disaster. Injuries and ineffectiveness turned Chen's contract into an albatross. His release prior to the COVID-19 shutdown costing the Marlins $22 million this year. Overall, he posted a 5.1 ERA and a 1.327 WHIP. While his numbers disappointed, Chen actually came close to his career strikeout and walk rates with 299 strikeouts and 98 walks in 358 innings. It is fair to wonder how much Chen has left. His signing with the Marines will be interesting just from that standpoint to see if he is capable of putting batters away in Japan. If his struggles continue over the remainder of the season, this could be one of the final times we see Chen on a professional mound. Former Baltimore Orioles pitcher is heading back to Japan while his time in the majors is likely over. He could have a second. Okay, he just said that. Good guys. All right. Okay, so that article, that was from a website called Fansided. So Chen gets to play in Japan, and we wish him well. So maybe he'll, see him in a matchup against Adam Jones in the near future, but we'll see.
I was actually surprised that his former NPB team didn't take a flyer on him, the Junichi Dragons. When I heard he was coming back to NPB, I didn't necessarily think that they had his rights.
Right.
You would have figured, given his past experiences there, that they would have taken the first flyer on him, but I guess Chiba jumped out.
Yeah, and I don't know the terms of his salary too. Maybe Chiba wanted to. Maybe they had a little more interest in him, or maybe they were able to get him on the cheap. I'm not sure how that worked with him, but good luck for them. And I think Chen will do well over there. I hope he does anyway. So, all right.
I think he's under a lot less pressure in Japan than he was in Florida,
right,
or Seattle.
Yeah. I guess too.
Since the contract that he did sign he never quite lived up to it. Now, granted, he was a victim of circumstance, having the Marlins behind him, who, let's face it, up until this year's Corona fluke, they kind of suck.
Yeah.
So you can only pitch as well as your defense is behind you, and that's on any given team.
And the Marlins have been notorious for doing this too, Eric, where it's like they would actually build up a decent team, actually win World Series, and then they would cut the doggone team just to save a few bucks here and there. And it seems like it's a vicious cycle. And I don't know, I kind of feel bad for the Marlins fans because it's kind of like, yay, we won the World Series, but it's kind of like but now you're getting rid of all my favorite players. What's going on? I mean, you do see that after a championship, but not to their extent. And I kind of feel bad. I think that's just poor public relations, poor relations with their players. I don't know. It's just overall bad management for a baseball team. But what are you going to do?
The old buy low, sell high concept.
Yeah, pretty much.
Doesn't always work.
No, it doesn't. All right, folks, we're going to go to the standings in the NPB. We have in the Central Division the Yomiuri Giants at 53-26-4, the Hanshin Tigers at 41-39-4, the Yokohama Bay Stars at 41-41-5, Shinichi Dragons at 31-42-5, the Hiroshima Carp at 32-44-8, and the Yakut Swallows at 32-46-6. Going to the Pacific Division, we have the Fukuoka SoftBank Hawks at 47-35-4, the Chiba Lotte Marines at 47-37-2, the Rakuten Golden Eagles at 42-41-3, the Saibu Lions at 40-42-1, the Nippon Ham Fighters at 40-43-3, and the Oryx Buffaloes at the bottom still at 31-49-5. And those are your standings for the NPB. All right. Eric, is there anything you would like to comment about our friends in Japan in the NPB?
Nothing really stood out. Trying to look up some stories here. Maybe something that stood out a little bit, but I don't know. Nothing really caught my eye. I watch a few games here and there. You know, they've got the replay games now on for the Fans Network.
Oh, okay. And that's still mostly the Pacific Division.
It's just 11 sports. They did find some sort of a commentator. I forget the guy's name, and I forget what sort of experience he even has, but the broadcasts are in English. He does seem to know his stuff a little bit. And it's much more fun to watch any game with crowds. Japan has been expanding its crowds over the last couple of weeks. As a matter of fact, a social media friend of mine has been able to attend some of the Bay Stars games. So she's all excited. She posted pictures on some of the Facebook groups and there.
I think I saw some of those too, and yeah, it did look like a good time. It looked like decent-sized crowds as well, so good for them, you know.
Yeah, they expanded, I believe, to either 50 or 60% capacity,
Nice.
which for those stadiums, it's still pretty good.
Yeah, very good, very good. All right, well, good luck to our friends in the NPB. Hopefully, more fans will be able to attend their games, and I don't know, hopefully one day I'd be one of them too, because, I mean, it's like before I met you, before I watched the KBO, I mean, I wanted to see some Japanese ball, and, you know, and there's other reasons I wanted to go to Japan too, and not having anything to do with sports, but some of their other culture, but anyway, hopefully
It's
do that.
the beer.
I'm sorry?
I said it's the food and the beer, dude.
Well, definitely the food there, although I like some of their beers, there it's more the sake, I would say, you know, and the maid cafes, and I don't know, a friend of mine actually went into the Godzilla Hotel. I want to go there, check that out. It's literally a hotel down the street from Toho Studios that has a quote-unquote life-size Godzilla looks like he's trying to shake the hotel building down, and like at the top of the hour, as this huge Godzilla statue, you can actually go to like a deck and get your picture taken with Godzilla's mouth, and you'll hear a roar once every hour, kind of like, I don't know, kind of like an old church chime bells, but instead it's new Godzilla roaring. So, but all right, well, I think we're gonna wrap things up with this episode of Pro Baseball World Tour. Eric, once again, great.
Got into Cuba.
I'm sorry?
I said the last couple of weeks we got into Cuba a little bit, and now there's games in full swing, so.
Okay.
I don't know if you get into that or not.
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to watch too many of that this week, but, I apologize. We should cover that a little better, but, have there been any interesting stories that you caught about their leagues this week, or?
As far as stories, no. I know they've played 12 games there. Mm-hmm. There's a bunch with 8-4 records. There's been a rainout or two here and there, but you've got 4 teams, which 8 out of the 16 teams qualify for playoffs.
Right.
So the top 4 teams are 8-4, being the Industriales, the Matanzas Crocodiles, the team from Villa Clara, and Santiago de Cuba are all 8-4.
Oh, wow.
So
it looks like we could have almost a CPBL situation where you have 4 teams going at it. Granted, they have a lot more teams than the CPBL, but still, it's good.
You got 16.
Yeah. Still good to see a good race, even though it's early in the season, but, it sounds like season's off to a good start for them. Okay.
Yeah. Just wish Cuba baseball would return to form as far as getting some star players back in there and maybe some defections into the major leagues or back to an MLB agreement. But we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Okay. And if I'm not mistaken, did Mexico, did they start up, or they're on their way to starting up soon? I think.
No, winter leagues will be starting up in the next couple of weeks. You've already had cancellation of the Arizona Fall League, but the instructional leagues, like they do in the minors, those are supposed to start in October. The winter leagues, I know Mexico is supposed to start off around October 15th. Mm-hmm. Dominican League normally starts off around that time. Venezuela normally starts off a week or two later. And then you've got Australia normally starting in November. Colombia is actually going to be playing again. They start, I believe, sometime around November. Puerto Rico as well. So there's no downtime for me as far as trying to catch a game either way.
Oh, no doubt, no doubt. And I don't think it'll be downtime for a lot of our listeners. So, all right, folks. All right, well, listen, I appreciate you as always, folks, for listening to the show. Me and Eric enjoy doing it every week for you, and as long as you enjoy us, we'll keep doing it. Crunch all you want, we'll make more. So, all right, okay, folks. Thanks for joining us. We will talk to you next week.